So as a recap of yesterday's session, and while I was actually looking for shorts the whole time, because essentially my model is a reversal model, or it trades reversals. With the current market being just up only, I have to be very, very patient and very, very picky in what kind of reversal setups I might trade. So the week started, there was Asia low, which was not the low for the day for NQ, but it was the low of the day for ES. In the end, the low of the day for NQ got printed in London session, so that's the current day low, and price just rallied up. When US opened, it just went on a tear. And what I do when there's such strong momentum, I do not look at the M1 to M3. I minimally pick the M4 and I want to see absolutely pristine, clear, wonderful PA on that lower time frame, because any type of chop or any type of doubt I might have in the setup will most likely lead to a less than favorable setup, and I want to absolutely make sure that I only take A plus reversals when the market is just up only. So I go to the higher time frames, and for example I have this M15 gap which did not occur or did not happen here for ES. But what I saw is that even though ES in London session had more momentum, in a sense, that's not entirely true, because what you can see is that there are continuously SMTs. So we have a slightly higher high here on NQ and an obvious lower high for ES. Then there was a higher low for ES and a lower low for NQ. So it's very difficult to gauge or get an idea or the temperature for what is the likely move next. ES was rallying, but was also stalling and stagnating quicker than NQ, and that mostly had to do with some tech stock on the Nasdaq exchange, or Nasdaq's were on a tear. They were just going up. I think it was Tesla, Google, Microsoft. And I was watching this M15, and I do not trade of the M15 because that's a bit too much for me. I think in the end it could have worked, but I'm not sure. So I go to the M5, and then what I see is I see a small gap here, no gap here, and I do not trade small gaps because that just doesn't provide with high probability setups. And what you see in this current price action environment is that there are hardly any fair value gaps. So that doesn't give me anything to trade off, because I want to see a sweep of a key level and I want to see a proper inverse fair value gap. So I went looking for the at the M4, and what I saw at the M4 was this level, 4-minute level. It was, I think, 14 points, 14 and a bit points, which is really good for me, because I also want to see, hey, how big is this gap? Because minimally I look for 6 points, but it also needs to be a good gap in terms or in relation to the move that happens. So if you have violent moves with 200 points, then taking a gap of 20, 25 points is actually okay. And if you have a relative small move, then 6 points is also okay. So I mark out this 4-minute, I have this 15-minute, I have it ready. And then I'm just looking, okay, so I mark out the more or less the level where this 4 and 15 minutes occur. So that's in this candle. Is it this candle? Yeah, that's this candle. Just, I don't mark it as a strict level, but just to get some orientation. Okay, so NQ is actually the stronger pair, ES is already breaking down. So would that mean that when NQ is breaking down from here, that we could get a move to the downside? I'm not sure, because most of the time when this pair, or when one pair is breaking down and it reaches its target, then it could reverse. So when you have a move down to the EQ or into premium or discount, then you might get a reversal, and then actually you can get a good setup to trade in favor of the higher time frame draw again. And I was so focused on reversals that I actually oversaw or missed a good continuation trade. So I've been fine-tuning and tweaking my reversal trade setup, but at the same time, I also want to have a similar model that helps me to trade the momentum. But I don't want to create a secondary strategy which has completely different variables than my reversal setup. So I'm looking for a similar checklist, because this is the checklist that I use, checklist table. I want to have a similar checklist to see if I can trade the same way in favor of the higher time frame draw. And what I missed completely, because I was just watching for reversals, because I was biased towards a correction, potential correction here on NQ based on what ES was doing. But what I was completely missing out, and that's always the magic of zooming out, is that on the 4 hour, so I have all these levels that I haven't been tagged yet. On the 4 hour, we were actually forming a higher time frame gap. And the 4 hour is just a wonderful gap. So I mark this out. I'll just do it like this, H4. And then I go back to the 4 minutes. And what you can see is that below now I see that there is a good gap that is being formed based off of this candle that can actually hold as support. And what my eyes, of course, yesterday didn't notice, but what I saw in hindsight today is that we were close to tagging that level. And I think, I'm not sure, maybe this was actually forming that level. So I was watching price just move down and I had these levels marked. And what you could see is that price was retesting this area. So you could see this as a retest. It was a move 50% to the EQ of this down move. So you could expect a continuation to the downside. And of course that for me is not the model that I'm trading. And price was just moving and then it was stalling. So again, this is not something I trade, and this is also not something I trade, because there's actually nothing to go off here, because what I see is just higher highs and ES is still lagging, but I want to see a good breakdown. There was no new high, so I could not use this as a change in the state, whatever. The gaps that were formed were still tiny and there was not real displacement over there. And I was watching, and of course I was still short biased here. But taking into account this H4 level, okay, so let's stop this. So now actually, let's go a few bars back. Okay, so what we got here now is that ES pierced into this H4 level. And not only that, it created a major SMT. So I can pick almost any of these wicks. Let's just, I can even take this one if I like. So I have a higher high, like a major higher high from a few hours back for NQ. And let's pick the same one. I have a lower high for ES. While I was actually having a short bias was also because of the bearish SMT that took place at the highs. That was over here. But the higher time frame SMT actually carries more weight into a setup than the lower time frame. So a lower time frame SMT or a SMT that occurs within less candles also carries over less the candles after. And now we have a really big SMT here. And it not only went through into this fair value gap, it also swept the earlier low, and also the low that formed the H4 candle, because I actually think it's based on this candle. So that's the one here. Yeah. Okay. So what we have now is a potential setup. So we did not get anywhere close to the M15, not anywhere close to the M4. So as far as I can tell now, ES reached its objective. It manipulated this low, tagged the H4 level, swept the H1 and the H4 level, and maybe even went to discount, but I'm not entirely sure if that was the case. Oof, it barely hit EQ. That would have been an additional tick to the setup. So in order to get long here, I want to see a proper displacement. So if I get the checklist, I'll put it on ES, because for ES that's actually what I want to see. So what do we have? We have a sweep, we have an FEG, we have an SMT, EQ of the move. Not really, I cannot say that. Do we have a clear drawn liquidity? Yes, we do have, because I will show. This is what so is beautifully called rounded edges, and we have some generated liquidity over here. Let's see if I can just make it a bit sweeter. Not really. So we have rounded edges here, and there are highs here, 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 and here. So that looks good. We have a clear drawn liquidity to move, and of course we have all-time highs here. Now what we want to see, and that's something we need to take into account, do we get an IFVG, which is the prime requirement? Maybe we print an SMT. I have learned that having clean PA, good displacement, is really important. We do have the lower time frame resistance. What is it? I always forget the thing. You know it. Liquidity. No, whatever. Sometimes I remember and sometimes I don't. So we have the setup here, and now you want to see a proper displacement. And the first candle, because what you want to see is a proper IFVG formed. Oh, we're on the 1 minute. Let's just take the 4 minutes. It goes a bit faster. There's no need to do this. Okay, so what we have a 4 minute candle, or a 4 minute candle displacing out of this fair value gap. So let's delete this because it's just creating noise. Because this gap was a bit, I think this was okay, but it did not provide the higher time frame setup, because there was no sweep, etc. You could have traded this bearish, but let's just not deviate from the plan here. And for NQ we have a similar type of gap, because now what I see, this is a little bit less than 6 points, but we do get a clear break here, so a very clear break, and then you would love to see that this now is becoming a BPR. So that's a 4 minute BPR. That's even better than an IFVG, so we have the IFVG in place. We did not print an SMT, but that's okay. So what do we have next? So the idea is now that we have now high probability that we can rely that this BPR will hold. I do not chase moves, so I do not enter I do not enter on a close or an open after the gap has been broken, but I trade the retest. And I have a couple of clear levels here. I have this level as a target. I have this level as a target, and if you might have a runner, then you can try to take it all the way to the top. But for me, I always take into account the two variables of a trade or a setup, which is price. Of course, I want to see a certain level getting hit for my R, but I also take into account time. I rather have a slightly lower R achieved quicker than a higher R achieved slower. And that mostly has to do with the fact that I use Apex, and Apex also has live drawdown. So for me there's no use going to 3R plus and then round tripping the whole move to break even, because that will only eat away out of my drawdown. So generally I take profits all the way when the move is actually occurring. So I have this 4-minute BPR. This is a 2.1 trade, which is already really good. And if you trade it up to here, you have a 4-hour trade. Well, that's an absolute gift. There's no need to be more greedy than that. Price is actually stalling a bit. And let's also keep NQ close, because I do keep it as a gauge to see, hey, how well is NQ holding, since that is supposed to be the stronger of the two. So price is chopping about. This is of course a scary candle, almost stopping you out, but it closes well. And of course when you have a bullish gap formed, in this case in the form of a BPR, then it should hold bullish. It can wick, and it can even wick through it, but it should definitely not close in the lower 50% of the gap. So you don't want to see a close below the dotted lines, and ideally, because that actually supports the strength of the gap, that you want to have a close above, which occurred here. And then you're in the trade, and then you just wait and hope that things will work out, because now it's up to the market. And as you can see, price is just chopping about. Actually then here, what you can see is that NQ apparently desperately wanted to retest that bullish gap, which was already done for ES, and then very quickly, well, not very quickly actually. This is a choppy trade. This can take a lot of the patience. And then in one candle, so it's actually chopping about for 30 minutes. So that wouldn't be a bad idea just to walk away. And then within 4 minutes, your first target is hit. And to be honest, I don't think I would hold it all the way here, because if I get to this target and I get up to, let's see how far this would be, 2.8, I think I would be very, very happy, close the trade, because getting it back below break even into a loss, that would be something I would never do. So I would either manually close my trades here, or I would trail my stop either to break even or to this wick and get stopped out over there, which would be a shame, because then afterwards it just rallied. But that's the interesting part. Then it's always good to have it's always good to have like a quick trade, prefer the quicker trade. So yeah, let's just see, because it was clean PA. Did we do it on the macro? Yes, we did it on the macro. I'm not actually paying too much attention to it, to be honest. No breaker, no change in the state, because the change in the state was here. So this is actually a really, really, really good setup. I love it. So what do I learn from this? I want to take into account that if I'm actually looking for reversals, it's very important to take into account that a failed reversal setup might actually be a continuation model trade in the favor of the higher time frame draw. So much to learn.